Alrighty, hello everybody. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about how Colonial Funeral Home and a few other funeral homes and cremation businesses were able to add over $55,000 in additional revenue within 12 months by correctly leveraging online arrangements. And just so you know, I'm not making this stuff up. I'll go ahead and start with a couple of case studies of our customers. This is Suzanne from Colonial Funeral Home of Leesburg. She and her husband are the owners. They are based out in Virginia. And before working with Parting Pro, she started noticing that a competitor in a nearby market was undercutting their pricing. And they were getting a lot of callers. More and more families were shopping, giving them a phone call, and then never following up. And then they ended up going to their competitor, right? So they were really trying to figure out how they could compete with this, but also not lose their overall generalized business, right? Being a full service funeral home, they are, because they were, offering the pricing at around $3,000, $3,500, and they were still getting people paying that amount. They didn't want to just cut their price down to $1,500 to compete, because that would really cannibalize their entire market. So we worked with Suzanne and helped them build out their sales process. We implemented an online option for these families. And within the first month, they already added 5 new cases, completely converted online. Over the last year, they ended up adding over almost $60,000 in revenue they otherwise would not have gotten. And you can see the anonymized transaction on the top right here in the image. These are their actual transactions, okay? This is a photo of Ron Cook, one of our customers. He's out in Michigan. He's a second-generation funeral director. And he realized there was a huge opportunity for him to grow market share. Within Cook Funeral Home, he launched cookcremation.com, and he was able to use the same staff. And he partnered with Parting Pro. So we worked with him on developing his online sales and follow-up process, as well as trained his staff. And before the first year, he added over 80 cases outside of his regular funeral home, which, if you do the math, is easily over $100,000 in the first 12 months. This process is super smooth. A family was actually able to get through the entire process, complete arrangements, sign all the documents without any help within 18 minutes. So he's very hands-off, and he didn't need to increase his expenses for this one. Here's a photo of Eric Newhouse. You might be familiar with him. He founded a company a while back called True Funeral. Eventually, he launched his own green cremation focused funeral home, and he partnered with Parting Pro as well from the very beginning. And we were able to help him out with his online arrangements and digital forms. We also helped him stay green, because that was one of the missions of the company. So he went completely paperless. And within his first 3 months of starting the new business with Parting Pro, he was already doing 20 cases a month. And he's been doing super well. And he has already over 40 plus reviews, 5-star reviews on Google. All right, so who is this presentation for? Okay, so this presentation is for funeral professionals who understand the massive financial opportunities that the increasing cremation rate and changing consumer landscape will bring. All right, so you may already be an established funeral home, and you've probably been thinking about launching a profitable cremation brand for years, but you're not quite sure where to start, right? A lot of people tell me that. You might already be an established high-volume cremation business, but you're struggling to find predictable and repeatable growth. And sometimes you might feel like you're leaving money on the table every month, or your families could be getting a better experience from you. Or maybe you're a smaller funeral home and you've been seeing heavy competition and you're just not sure on how to protect or gain market share. So if you follow any of these three categories, then this is for you. What you also may be experiencing, you probably tried a lot of things in the past. You probably know your marketing dollars are not being spent efficiently. And every day you feel like your staff could be spending their time a little bit more productively, right? You probably have a grand vision of what you want your business to operate like, but you don't really get a chance to implement this vision because there's so many other things going on. Maybe you tried ads in the past, and maybe they're working, maybe they're not, but you can't really get a good finger on the ROI. You perhaps tried implementing tools piecemeal, but you haven't gotten the value back because you've been doing it piecemeal. Maybe you try leveraging your current website provider, but there really isn't a solution out there that specifically fits your needs. You really want to become and stay the market leader. You really want to have your business operate like a well-oiled machine. So even if you're not there, you can step away from it a little bit and it will go fine without you. And kind of deep down in terms of your goals, you really want people to notice the level of service you provide and the value that you're doing it at, right? You want to be able to increase this quality of the experience you give to your families while decreasing the amount of time that is required of you. And you know that you're on the verge of massive success, but you're going to need some help, right? You know that you need some help. You have a deep understanding of what the market is doing, where it's going, and the needs of your families. You're motivated, you're smart, you're compassionate. And you know that if you don't figure it out soon, there's someone else that's going to come out and take your lunch, okay? So all you need is a game plan to put it all together. You're really willing to break through the walls to make your dream a reality. So if any of these things describe you, then this presentation is for you. I'm going to walk you through how to launch and run a successful online arrangement business. Who this is not for? So this is not for people that don't have a growth mindset. So if you have a fixed mindset, you're generally not going to be able to see opportunities. So that means you're not going to be able to take advantage of opportunities. And if you can't do that, it's going to be really hard to be successful. This is also not for people who don't see the industry as changing. Obviously consumer habits are not the same. So the way you buy things have changed over a lot in the last 10 years. If you think about yourself. So people that refuse to see the change or are blaming the customers, blaming the market, or blaming the families for changing, you're probably not really going to adapt too quickly as well. So if that's you, then you can probably stop the video right here. So there's really only one thing that you really, really need to understand when building out a successful online arrangement process. And once you understand this, everything else is going to fall into place, okay? So in order to build a successful online arrangement process, you need to make everything as easy as possible for the family. All right, so if I can repeat that, in order to build a successful online arrangement process, you need to make everything as easy as possible for the family. And the problem is that really, I want to say most funeral homes today do not have a very strong grasp on what convenience means to the modern consumer. And they're not correctly leveraging technology to help their families, okay? And on top of this, the industry is so slow moving that most companies in the industry don't really have strong product experience. And this creates a poor experience for your families and wasted money for you, okay? So Partnering Pro really is the only company out here dedicated to helping funeral homes build something that actually works. This is the important part. It's not enough that you can tell someone, hey, go to my website, you can put a credit card in and make a purchase, okay? That is not enough. Just functionally having it work is not enough. People aren't gonna do it. You need to think much deeper in how you can make it intuitively easy for them, okay? Every little thing matters. So when you're thinking about building on your process, all you need to have in mind is this one idea. Everything I can do in my power to make things easier for the family, I absolutely need to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the presentation. Before that, I'm gonna give you a real quick background on the founding team. This might not matter too much for you. You can go ahead and skip ahead, but just to give you a little bit of background on my founding team, which is why I think we've been so successful in such a short amount of time at building a product that works. All of our backgrounds are in consumer technology. So we've had jobs as product managers, engineers, data scientists, marketers at tech companies in San Francisco. We graduated from UCLA with degrees in computer science, math, business econ. And we worked at companies like Quinn Street, which is a lead gen company. So they literally specialize in getting people to fill out forms online to generate leads for the companies. That's really all they do. We worked at companies like Teespring, which is an e-commerce company. So they specialize in building product to get people to want to put in their credit card information to buy things online. We have experience in marketing. So collectively, over our careers, we purchased over $10 million worth of advertising for large brands. Obviously, this isn't our own money. So we have a deep, very understanding on how to generate interest online and actually turn that into a purchase or a conversion, okay? So because of our backgrounds, we've been able to help funeral homes sell millions of cremation business online. And we help all sorts of funeral homes. It doesn't matter if you're a small funeral home or if you're owned by a large corporation. If you want help with online arrangements, we can help you. All right, so let's get into it. Step one, make your sales process intuitively easy to understand and require as little work as possible for the families. All right, there are so many benefits to this, which I'll get into. But take an example of one of our customers, Lori. If you find yourself too busy, this is going to add hours to your day. So this is Lori Bowman, owner of Bowman Funeral Homes out in Bowman Funeral Parlor, actually out in Indiana. And they're really well known in the area, and they've been a market leader in the area for quite some time now. And they have a pretty large radius in terms of the families they serve. I think they go out sometimes 90, 95 plus miles. Obviously, Indiana is not as packed as where I'm at, which is in LA. But anyways, before starting with us, they had such a manual and hard process for the families. The staff was literally writing everything out by hand, and oftentimes the family will need to come in and sign paperwork. So even families that were 95 miles away would need to come in and sign paperwork, or they would need to get a fax. And a lot of times they'd be faxing the paperwork or emailing it, and it would get confusing. And there's a lot of stuff that would get missed. So there's a lot of back and forth. So their staff is constantly just figuring out, trying to line up the paperwork. On top of that, a lot of next of kin were in different states. And they require multiple signatures, obviously. So the large area, it just led to a very poor customer experience, but also very time consuming for the staff, right? And then this just snowballs into more work, a worse and worse experience for families, and expensive for the business because it hurts profits, right? So we work with Lori and the team on developing a smooth and frictionless online process with their families. Lori told us that it made families who were farther away feel more inclusive because they can now browse and look at merchandise and make some decisions. And ultimately, it saved them so much more time and money. All right. Here's another example. August, he's a second generation funeral director out in Illinois. He used to drive out to see people in person for his cremation business he was starting. A lot of times he'd be spending half of his week just driving around and making appointments, getting through the paperwork, sitting down with the family for 2 hours. And we worked with him on adding a guided sales process on his homepage, and made sure that it worked really well for his needs, and his families loved it. And in turn, he actually got to spend more free time with his own family. He added around 60 cases his first year working with us. And here's a quote of him saying how much his family's appreciated and is grateful that it's so easy to use. Right? And there's a picture with him and his kids. So what are the key points of really being able to make sure this process is easier for your families? Number one, leveraging technology to save your time is not only going to give you or give your family a better experience, but it's also going to save you money and allow you to do other things. So think about the amount of time your staff or you are wasting on paperwork right now. Think about the opportunity cost, right? What else could you be doing with their time? We recently helped the funeral home, and they added about 5 to 6 hours per week. And I said, what are you going to do with your time now? And he says, I'm going to focus on making it grow. So that's 5 or 6 extra hours you can work on marketing and other efforts to grow their business, rather than just getting bogged down in manual work, right? Manual work, which is just like following up and getting forms signed and emailed. It's really important to make things as easy as possible for your families, as it will affect how they view your business, and also if you actually win their business. So really, I'm sure you know this from a perspective of a consumer, but once they get to your website, once they talk to you, the customer's already judging you, right? They're judging the experience, they're judging how up to date your website is, they're judging how you're communicating with them. The better experience you can offer to them leads to more word of mouth conversions and also social proof later on. People need to be able to understand what to do next intuitively, or you're gonna lose the business. I can't stress this enough. This is a fact. All right, if you cannot put any responsibility on the family, right? You can't be like, hey, you should have known to click this button that's right in the middle of my website. That process has to be as easy as possible, has to be dummy free, okay? Or else you're gonna lose the business. Just have that in your mindset. So things like digital forms are a must. Families these days typically don't have the ability offhand to print or fax things. So whatever hoops you're making them jump through is only gonna worsen their experience and reflect poorly on you. So call to actions that you have on your website, they have to be easily determined and seen on the homepage without having to scroll. If we scroll lower, which we call, above the fold, everything above the fold. So if you have to scroll anything lower than that, that's not really the best way for you to do things, okay? If you have to do 3, 4, 5 clicks to get to the call to action, you're never gonna get anyone to take the action you want them to take. And another note here is you really wanna make everything as mobile friendly as possible for the family, because a lot of times these days, families are finding you on their phone, and you need to have a good mobile experience that matches your web experience. All right, so let's go over some relevant questions to what we just reviewed. Probably one of the first questions people always ask is, are digital signatures legal? The answer is yes. Digital signatures are legally binding, and they're recognized at both the state and federal level. However, there are a few states, probably 3 or 4, that have specific rules. Like, for example, New York, they have specific rules by the New York Funeral Board in terms of which documents cannot be signed legally. So state by state, there are a couple of rules. The mass majority of states, though, accept digital signatures. I would say probably 46, 47 the states are totally fine. There's a video on our website with the interview with a lawyer named Paula Masters that goes into detail on this. So you can check that out. But yes, digital signatures are legally binding. Another question we often get is, how do I know that this is the right person that's signing my paperwork? And that's a very common question. It's a very good question. So I would describe this as the process that you're using today to get paperwork signed. Let's say, for example, you're emailing paperwork to somebody and they're printing out their sign and emailing back. Whatever process and verification you do in your current process, you can still do with digital signatures. So for example, if you check ID, you can require the family to upload a photo ID with a signature. If you look at their ID and match it with the signature that they use, you can require them to actually draw their ID or draw their signature with a digital signature. So it's really up to you on how you want to do that. And also, the digital signatures have added benefit of having the time and date stamp, as well as the IP address, which is your computer's address, essentially, and an email address tied to that document. All right. Another question is, should I show my pricing? And I would guess, especially for cremation shoppers, it is better to show your pricing than to not, period. Okay, so imagine yourself as a consumer. If you go to somebody's website in services or products you're looking for, do you expect to see pricing? You will probably lose more business on the people that go to your website that don't see pricing and go elsewhere than people that go to your website and see pricing and it's too high and they leave, right? And if the pricing is too high for them, you're probably not going to be able to convince them anyways. So just make it easy for them to understand your pricing. Don't just have a GPL uploaded on there and have them look at that. You want to make it easy to digest, and you want to summarize things and kind of group things together so that it's easy to understand on top of your GPL being there. Where should I display the call to action? Always front and center, top middle of the screen, top right of the screen, above the fold, meaning they don't need to scroll in order to get to this button or information, okay? All right, step 2. Your process needs to collect payment upfront automatically, and you need to allow for low pressure upselling to maximize revenue. All right, so a perfect example would be these guys. This is one of our favorite customers, Omega Society. They're an amazing company. We've been working really close with them over the past year or so. They're a high volume cremation brand out in Orange County. And they're very meticulous, great attention to detail, really understand their customers. And they were doing everything on paper before talking with us, okay? And they would have the family drive into the funeral home and sit down with them to make arrangements. And they weren't really selling any merchandise. One of their concerns was that they did not want to put their families into a high pressure sales environment. So they would not push urns or anything like that on them. And that's really respectable, right? Because they didn't want to put people in an uncomfortable situation. But after working with them and really understanding their concerns and understanding their process, we implemented a very easy upsell process for urns and keepsakes. And we were able to provide a solution where their families can actually just choose merchandise on their own. So we can, pre-select defaults. So if they go through, they can include the plastic urn. And if they're interested, they can add one on. So it's completely up to the family if they want to choose something. And in their first month, they added, I think, over $6,000 in revenue just from the simple change. Over the last year, they've been adding per month at least $5,000 in additional revenue. So you can do the math on that one. And it is a very simple change. So it's a very low pressure sell. If the family comes into their website, they can go ahead and pick on their own. If the family comes in person, they a lot of times will have the iPad there where they turn around and they just swipe through that. So a very easy process to implement for them, and it made a big difference in this aspect. Here's an email that was sent to us by one of our customers. His name is John Perks from Arizona, and he leverages Parting Pro for online arrangements as well. And this email says, I've noticed that our online families upgrade to earn 75% of the time. This is huge. Our in-house arrangement for direct cremation is the exact opposite, and those families only upgrade 25% of the time. It was interesting statistics. I thought you might be interested. Okay, so we've seen this a lot where you actually make more sales when you let the family choose on their own. And this makes a lot of sense because people do not like to be sold to, they like to buy. And if you imagine yourself in a scenario where you're sitting with somebody and they spend 45 minutes on forms and they say, do you want to buy this urn? You have a minute to decide. You're going to be like, oh, I kind of want to check it out more. I'll think about it later. Right, and you want to buy anything. But if you're in the comfort of your own home, you can kind of you can choose to pick on your own. It makes that process a lot easier. So definitely you want to implement a process that includes an upsell aspect of it, because the margins are very important, guys. You know, when you're running an online business and you're trying to and when conversion is very important, it's really important to watch your margins as well. If you don't implement this, you're losing out on a whole other stream of revenue. Okay, so a couple of key points think about when you're doing this. You want to build your process with a family in mind. So put yourself in their shoes, right? Put yourselves in the consumer's shoes and imagine what you would want. So I would avoid doing things like price gating, which is where you don't show price until you get some sort of information. I would avoid asking them to create a username and password, because that's just extra steps, right? You want to avoid extra steps because people don't want to do that, right? Think about if you go to Amazon and they ask you for your social security number up front to buy something, right? They're gonna destroy their sales if they do that. So you really want to avoid asking for any information up front. You really want to maximize your profits and revenue with a low pressure sales process, right? Once again, people don't like to be sold; they like to buy. So just let them pick what they want. If they're not interested, not a big deal. Just have them keep moving on. And there's ways you can do that in the product. You also don't want to overwhelm your potential customers with too many options, okay? Decision fatigue is a real thing. If you haven't heard that before, it's just people, they say that you're only limited to a number of decisions per day, and the more decisions you have to make, the more tired you get, right? So you don't want to overwhelm this person with too many decisions up front. They kind of just want to know what the options are. So just show them some pricing, show them some options. You don't want to throw on 5,500 urns on the first page, just because you're going to overwhelm the family. You also want to auto-calculate pricing as much as possible. So this is two things. One, it avoids families from making more options to choose from, and also avoids mistake in pricing, okay? So a couple of questions I often get is, when do I start asking for vital statistics information? And typically you want to start asking for this personal information only after you secure the business. You don't want to have too many obstacles between the families being interested in your services and the family actually committing to using your services, right? So think about this. If you're interested in using my services and I said, okay, hey, come fill out this form with 30 different fields and get back to me, there could be 100 things that happen between you receiving this document and you actually becoming my customer. Someone else will call you back, and you go with them. So once you secure payment up front, then you're definitely going to take the time to fill out my paperwork, right? Should I put everything on my GPL on my arrangement process? No, you should not. You want to, once again, avoid overwhelming the family. So I would use the 80-20 rule here, right? So if 80% of the time you'll buy this, include it. If not, you might want to think about it, right? How much merchandise should I display? 2 to 5 cremation caskets. We found it worked pretty well. About 6 to 12 urns, and 6 to 15 keepsakes or pieces of jewelry. Anything more than that, you start seeing a little bit of diminishing returns. And what calculations can I automate? So I would say a lot of location-based calculations, right? So for example, if your state has different pricing by county, so there's different death certificate pricing, you can calculate that automatically. There's mileage fees. there's permit fees, really just any sort of fees. Taxes obviously calculated automatically. So just focus on these types of things. That'll make it a lot easier for your family to get all the way through. All right, step 3, you need to implement a repeatable and trackable structured sales process that everyone on the team follows. Okay, so I know a lot of times when funeral directors or funeral home owners see sales process, they say, hey, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to be a salesperson. I'm a funeral director. And that I completely understand. I would argue that sales is really just about helping customers understand what's available and educate them, and then having the customer choose what's best for them, right? And that's exactly what funeral directors do. Additionally, you are running a business, and it's important for you to track what's going on so you can, first of all, understand, and then second of all, improve on it. All right, so here's a good example of one of our early customers. His name is Andy Rumpf. He's the owner of Woodlawn Funeral Home out in Indiana. And when we started working with Andy, he is actually one of the few people that could say, this is my shopper conversion, because he actually measures it. So he was telling us he converts about 1 out of every 4 price shoppers. And typically his sales process would be, he gets a phone call, the family asks questions, he answers those questions, and then he would ask them if they would like to make an appointment to come in. And about 1 out of 4 times the family would say, yes, I would, and they would make an appointment and have them come in. The other 3 times the family would say, there's some sort of excuse, not right now, or I'm going to call you back, and they never made that appointment. Okay, so obviously if someone is just calling Andy for the first time and they find out pricing, they don't have anything to compare to, why would they make an appointment? Because they're still shopping, right? So they're still in the research phase. So it's kind of a big ask to say, hey, you just called me and you want to make an appointment to come in. That is a little bit of a big ask, right? So if you think about it, and that's what a lot of people are doing, just say, hey, want to make an appointment to come in? No, okay, thank you. I'll call you back, hang up, and there's no follow-up. So we worked with Andy and helped him change his script a little bit. And we had him actually ask for email addresses. And we also developed an email script that he could send to every caller after the call ended to follow up as a very soft follow-up. So in the email, we would have information about Andy and his funeral home, and it made a much easier next step. So in the next step would be like, actually, what you're asking about pricing, you can actually click here in the email and actually see my pricing. And then once you get comfortable, you can kind of put in your information and pay. So that next step, we kind of eased the family into it. And we saw that increase conversions by quite a bit, about 51% in the first 3 weeks implementing it. No additional dollars on marketing, no additional dollars on new staff. And then he's been using this for quite some time now, and he's done very well for himself. He's probably more than doubled his business since we started working together. So very important to measure your sales process, understand what's going on, and to continuously work on improving it. So a couple of key points to understand here is, number 1, you do not want to rely on the family to get back in touch with you. You have to take initiative and lay out the next steps. So it's like, okay, you can ask the family if they want to come in. If they don't, what's your next step after that? You have to have something there. Okay, you don't be like, okay, I'm gonna wait for you to call me back, I guess. Everyone on your team also needs to be in unison, working together and understanding in what the process is. And everyone needs to follow a script, whether that's on the phone or if it's email you're gonna be sending. That way you can measure the script, right, and how people are performing. If you have 4 or 5 people doing the exact same thing and one person's doing exceptionally well, or one person's doing very poorly, you can actually dive deeper in understanding what's going on here. Always try to collect follow-up information. So we always recommend collecting an email because a lot of times funeral directors don't want to call back, which I understand. So an email is a much less intrusive way to do that. And every time the email, you also want to have a next step. So what's the next call to action? What do you want them to do? Make sure you track callers. So track how many calls you're getting, what's next, what you guys did, and what the result is. That's how you can measure success. And then you don't want to leave anything open-ended to the family. So the family needs to be very clear on what the next step for them is. and you need to define that clearly for your staff so they can define it clearly for the family. All right. So a couple of questions that we often get asked here is, number one, how do you ask for an email address, right? So you definitely want to position this as a benefit for the family. So the family is asking you for pricing, and you give them pricing. You can say something like, hey, let me send this over to you so you have it in writing. You're probably calling other people, and it's going to be hard to remember. So what's the best email address I can send this over to? And you'll have it in writing, and I'll have more details on there. So that's a very easy way to do it. What should be included in this email script? So I would always just include, so leave nothing to assumptions. Always include, your funeral home name, your name, contact details. You want to put as little responsibility on the family as possible, because they will probably not remember who you are or where you're from. So you need to make it easy. I would say they probably remember how you made them feel, but that's about it. And always include a next call to action. Like, for example, Andy was click this button to see pricing and get started. Which leads me into the next question, which is, what should that be? Definitely, that would be a good example of a next step. But really, anything that leads to progressing the process, which is getting you to getting paid. Okay, that's what I would focus on. So, step number 4: turn your families that you just served into forever fans with social proof. All right, so here are the Google reviews. Some of the customers that I've just talked about, and some of the ones you haven't seen yet. But you can see a lot of these funeral homes have very high reviews. They have reviews 170, in the 50s, in the 20s. And on average, funeral homes in general do not get a lot of reviews because for a few reasons. Number one, I would say, is because it's not like you're a restaurant, right? You don't have a ton of repeat business. People don't come in all the time, multiple times a month. So you don't get as many chances to ask for reviews. You aren't able to really give somebody an appetizer to check in or write a review, right? That's not really something that you can offer. And then additionally, it's kind of a hard conversation sometimes, right? It's easy for a restaurant to ask, hey, review me. It's harder for a funeral home to ask, hey, review us, right? Because they're going through a tough time. And a lot of times funeral homes don't really understand the power of reviews, so they're not really building it into their process to ask for reviews. So it's very important to do this, because otherwise you're not going to get reviews. These numbers right here are pretty high for reviews for funeral homes in the industry in general. And you can see some of our newer customers that just started with us not too long ago also have a lot of reviews. You can see this customer, Highlands Cremation and Funeral Care, out in North Carolina. We just started working with them recently, and they were not, when they started working with us, they were not really a high-tech company. They had a lot of problems in their process in which they communicated with each other, communicated with families, had the next step for the family. And within a couple of weeks, they went from not very high-tech to actually being recognized as having a good online option and receiving praise for their technology. Right, so it's instant transformation. We have other customers that just started with us, and then within weeks they got 10+ reviews. So this is definitely possible. It's just a process in which and how do you collect these reviews. You can see the owner here is actually being very proactive and writing a comment on each of these reviews, which I would highly recommend. It just shows that the owner is very in touch with what's going on, and they really care about their customers. So a couple of ways to think about on how to get reviews. Like I just mentioned, funeral homes are at a disadvantage because you don't have a ton of repeat business and you can't really offer too much. A lot of times people only write a review when they are incentivized, meaning they had a very poor experience. So that's why you see a lot of funeral homes with just a couple of reviews and they're negative. So you really want to increase reviews because this increases your visibility, right? It helps you with organic search, and also leaves a really good first impression on a potential customer. And you can get reviews on, you obviously want to kind of get the main platforms like Google, Yelp, or Facebook. I would really kind of try to skew towards Google if you're just starting out, because Google is tied to Google Maps, and a lot of times people are searching it from Google, so Google will promote their own reviews first. And To do this, you need to actively ask for reviews, and you also need to make it very easy for the family to write these reviews. So what are some questions I commonly get on here is, what should I do if I get a bad review? Okay, so if you get a bad review, you should always respond to the review publicly and do not argue with the family. If the reviewer is not reasonable or not real, just state facts. Okay, don't get defensive. Don't start accusing the person of anything. And you just want to remember that most people read reviews with a grain of salt. So you just need enough good reviews to drown out the bad ones. Okay, so just focus on good reviews. If you get a bad review, don't worry about it. Just drown them out. How many reviews should you have? Obviously, the more the better. I would say a good conversion rate that we've seen is about 10 to 13%. That's very good. That's 10 to 13% of the families that you serve actually going back and writing a review about you. So think about the number of cases you do per year, multiply that by 10%, and that should be what you aim for. And then you should be doing that every year, okay? How should you ask for reviews? So similar to everything else that you're doing, you always want to make it super easy for them. So you can send them a link directly to the actual place you're writing the review. So you can email or text them a link. And you want to try to make it as simple as possible. So you don't want to have a long survey, like how do we do and this and that. You just want to, for this purpose, you just want to be like, please write this review, right? That's all you gotta do. Hit a button and write a sentence. That's it. All right. So in summary, you just gotta do these 4 things. Number 1, make your sales process intuitively easy to understand for the family, okay? You wanna build in automatic payment process and upsell opportunities. You wanna make sure everyone on your team follows the same process, and that needs to be measurable and repeatable. And you wanna turn the families that you just served into public fans, lifelong fans with online reviews. So if you do these 4 things in this order, you're gonna be able to really quickly scale up your business by leveraging online arrangements. All right, so there's really 2 ways to do this. There's the hard way, which I've seen this tried many times. So you can try building everything yourself. And the problem with this is most funeral directors are not engineers, they're not programmers. So you're gonna need to shell out a bunch of money up front to pay the programmer, probably hourly. Another thing that people don't typically know or they don't understand is your programmer, your engineer is not gonna be the same as your product manager or your designer. Okay, these are separate roles. So either you're gonna have something that's not very user friendly, or you're gonna need to be paying somebody else to do this, or you're gonna be doing it yourself. And then you're gonna be basically having a second job. And then you're also gonna have to continuously pay for support with small updates and things like that. And I've seen this too many times I count. So a lot of people don't understand when you build technology, you have to support it, right? Because once they update, let's say they update Chrome, something new, whatever browser is not gonna work anymore. You're gonna need to fix that. So you need someone constantly working on this. And there's also not much room for error. So if you're testing this with real traffic, if you don't think everything out thoroughly in the beginning, you're gonna lose a lot of customers. So the stakes are actually really, really high. You don't wanna just start something new and start testing it with real customers, right? You also might not fully understand all the technology. Obviously, it's not your job. So you're gonna spend a lot of time and money trying to figure out what we already know. You're also gonna have trouble hacking together a bunch of third-party applications. But there's something out there for your specific needs, which will ultimately give your families a poor experience. And this is gonna make you look very unprofessional. Additionally, the economics are not gonna work out too well for you because you're gonna be overpaying for all these bits and pieces of technology that you don't completely need. And after all that, you're still not gonna have a repeatable structured sales process that's optimized, and you're not gonna be able to scale very quickly. So I've heard a lot of stories where people came to us, they've tried this in the past, and then they came to us and they said, these are the problems I'm having. And it's very common. This is not just in the funeral space. This is really in anything with building your own technology. The alternative is really the easy way, right? Parting Pro will take the guesswork completely out of it. We're gonna walk you through our implementation process and our training process. and our implementation is typically handled by our CEO. So you can work very closely with us on helping you get started. We're going to be able to consult with you on your marketing strategy and your web presence. We're going to help you through developing your sales process. So that's scripts you can use, email scripts, and we're going to help train your staff. And we customize everything exactly for your business. Okay. And then after implementation, we assign a personal customer success manager to help keep you on track. So I know if you get busy, we'll have someone that regularly keeps you on track. You check in with them. Most of our success managers are actually previous users of Parting Pros. They worked with our customers and they wanted a career change in the tech, and this is a good transition with a funeral background into technology in the funeral space. And then we also guarantee a 30-day go live period. So within 30 days of signing up, you'll be able to go live. So think about this. Let's say today you click on this button, you sign up a call with us, we talk to you tomorrow. 31 days from today, you'll have a working and implemented sales process. That's assuming that you put in the work that we require of you. All right, so again, this is for funeral professionals who do understand the massive financial opportunities that the increasing cremation rate and changing consumer landscape is going to bring. So people that have a growth mindset, and typically it's for funeral homes that want to launch a separate cremation brand, separate from their funeral home or within their own funeral home, or it's for cremation brands or funeral homes that are looking to exponentially grow, and they typically need some help with profitability and also efficiency. All right, and we help all different types of funeral homes, right? From large funeral homes to small ones. Traditional funeral homes are launching a new brand to, just outright cremation outfits. So for example, some of these customers here are, part of Care Services. Some of them are some of the largest cremation brands in the country, to just, individually owned funeral homes that are looking to edge out some of their competitors. So, it really doesn't matter what kind of funeral home you have, as long as you understand these things that we just talked about, you're going to be able to grow very quickly. And you've already seen this. So we have a ton of customers that we've helped. We added tens of thousands of revenue in the first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. Really, our customers are saying a lot of great things about us, how we're innovative, we're changing. The market is changing, so you really need to adapt as soon as possible. And here are just what our customers are saying about them. So it's very important that you are providing a good experience, because this helps bring new business, right? So for us, our customers are saying great things about us, so they can provide case studies and quotes, help us grow our business. Your customers can go out and write reviews about you and give you quotes to help you grow your business. Okay, so if everything today made sense for you and you're interested in chatting more, I would highly recommend for you to book a call with us. Click the button below or above and book a call, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you have and set up a plan for you to really help grow your business. Once again, my name is Albert from Parting Pro, and just go ahead and book a meeting with me. I'll be happy to chat with you. If it's not me, you'll get one of my associates, and we're really going to be able to help you out. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and see you on the other side.